What's up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Age of Quarantine. My name is Chris Enriquez. You can follow me at Chris Enriquez Drums. I play in the band Spotlights, at Spotlights Music, and I work at Revolver Magazine, at Revolver Mag. I'm really excited about today's episode because I will be joined momentarily by one of my favorite drummers, Sammy Siegler, one of the best drummers from New York and just all around the music industry. The guy played in Project X, Side by Side, Youth of Today, Judge, Civ, Glassjaw, Rival Schools, Nightmare of You, Limp Bizkit, Tech Nine, Head Automatica, Constant Elevation, Gorilla Biscuits, Shelter. Oh man, I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch, but he had a huge impact on me, and I'm very humbled as a drummer to speak with him tonight. While we're waiting him to join, I want to give a shout out to the friends of mine that helped me make this possible. First of all, shout out to Yanni from Constant Elevation and Caspian for introducing me to Sammy, and thank you to my bandmates in Total Meltdown, Andrew Castle for the awesome artwork, and Ralph Torres for video editing. If you ever miss an episode and you want to catch one, then you can just go on YouTube and look up my channel, Christopher Enriquez. What you hear right now in the background is one of my favorite songs from Rival Schools, which is one of Sammy's bands, one of his many bands. And one big thing I'm missing is that he also played in Error Type 11. Anyway, enough of me babbling. Let's get Sammy on the screen and let's start talking about his story. He came to be such an important figure from the New York hardcore and beyond scene. Sammy!
Yo, what's up, man?
I'm chilling, man. It's so awesome to, I've been saying this all day. I'm so humbled to be, even though we're virtually talking, but as a drummer and someone from New York, it's very humbling to just sit and talk with you. So thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, dude, it's just two gentlemen talking, two drummers, musicians. My friends were texting me, and I was like, look, it's not a roast. It's just it's an artistic conversation, man. Two dudes. I thought I had my act together, and I went to your Instagram. I screwed it up, and then I was scrambling, but then I remembered Sam Vitus bar, of course.
Hey, no worries, man. Look, we usually start with a couple formalities, but to be quite honest with you, your career is so, I don't know what the word is, but you have, let's just say you've had a lot going on in your musical career, and I'm afraid that in the hour, if I don't just jump right into it, we're barely going to even touch the surface. So if it's cool with you, I want to kind of just jump right into the interview. Is that cool?
Let's do it. Let's get it on.
Yeah.
We say scratch the surface in hardcore.
Hell yeah. Well, let's start with this. I mean, I think a lot of us know the answer to this question, but let's hear you kind of tell your story. Where are you originally from?
I grew up in New York City. I grew up on 15th Street between 5th and 6th. Yeah, I grew up in New York City. I was born in New York Hospital, and you know, go back. My great-grandfather had a moving and storage business on West 11th Street called Siegler Brothers Moving and Storage, which started in 1875. And he and his brother ran it. My grandfather and his brother ran it. My dad and his brother ran it. But yeah, they ultimately lived on 15th Street. That's where I grew up.
Awesome. I get really excited when you get to talk to people that are originally from New York, especially in those days, because I was born in 1980, so it's not like I'm that young or old. I'm kind of in the middle, but like I certainly grew up looking up to you and a lot of the people that you played music with, and the whole backstory to the hardcore scene and how you all came up has always been fascinating. By the way, I should mention to everybody watching, if any of you have questions around the 30-minute mark, I'll get to those questions. There's a little question mark box. You can leave your questions in there, and I'll eventually get to them. Sammy, when and how did you start playing drums?
Yeah, I think, my dad played drums, and my grandfather played drums. So that was really a big part of it, coupled with having an older sister who kind of got me into, music, and then going through a heavy Kiss phase at like an age of like, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something, and just like joining the Kiss Army and getting all the stuff and just being into it and like seeing the stage and wanting to do that. But, my grandfather, we had, drumsticks and like a pad. And I remember like early memories was just a double stroke roll, which was mom. And they taught it to me like mama, papa, left, left, right, right, left, left. And that was a double stroke roll. And then, you know, kind of started taking lessons. I think my sister was actually playing drums at the time. Like we both kind of had like a little competitive thing for a minute. And then she ultimately got me into well, actually, so yeah, then my friend Matt Pincus, who played bass and Judge, like he and I would hang out. We got into punk rock together around like 10 or 11 years old. And we would kind of like, these are just interesting memories now, it's coming back. But yeah, like we would sort of like air drum and just like pretend we were in a band and play along to like Clash records. But even going back further, I remember I went to Village Community School for a little bit on West 10th Street. And like me and my friends, they'd make guitars in shop class, so they didn't even work, but it was like a show and tell day or something, and my dad brought in his whole drum set, and I kind of like air drummed on this drum set to a 45 of either Rock the Casbah, or probably Should I Stay or Should I Go? So yeah, just like always, just, you know, like probably like many kids, just had that kind of desire, but got into this band called Noise Police that my sister got me into with these two older kids, Alex and Toby. And Alex, they later on they were in the Skadanks, and Toby became Rocker T. Alex Valenti, I follow him on Instagram. He still plays a lot. He plays with Matty Pasta. He plays with different people. But yeah, Noise Police was cool. We were like reggae, ska, punk, hardcore. We played some really bizarre shows. Like they went to Stuyvesant High School. They were older than me. But we played on the Circle Line Ferry once. They had a thing called Founders Day where they went to like, I don't know, like Governor's Island or something. The whole high school went. And I was not in high school. Again, I was like 11. And we went, and the whole school, to me, seemed like they were all, you know, doing drugs. I think one kid dropped acid and jumped off the side of the boat. Some kids were moshing and jumped through the plate glass. It was really a fucking crazy memory. But Noise Police was really my first band. We played the Village Independent Democrats. The Cops came. It was just like a really interesting time in my introduction, I think, to punk and hardcore. We covered Power by AF, and I think that was sort of my introduction to New York hardcore.
That's sick, man. And it was an interesting time, like I was saying earlier, in New York, to just be exposed to all that stuff. I don't want to get too nerdy for any of the non-drummers out there that probably won't really understand too much of the terminology, but the one thing I do want to ask real quick that might be a little drum nerdy is, did you just learn right off the bat, like, you obviously learned from family, but did they teach you open hand, or is that just what came natural to you?
Yeah, so I'm lefty and my dad's righty, so I would just sit on his drum set, and it just was natural to play open-handed. Like the idea of crossing over didn't make any sense, which was totally cool for slow tempo stuff as I was learning. But then I started to, you know, I got into hardcore and realized that I had to move the ride cymbal around because I couldn't cross over, and then I had to figure out this like floor tom, raise the floor tom a little higher, so I could kind of jump over to the floor tom. But, you know, sort of developed this, you know, this open-handed style, which, you know, I couldn't imagine not playing like that now at this point. But
right. And then before we kind of move on from how you learned, you did mention your family and all that. Was it formal lessons, or was it like, did you ever like go? Yeah.
Well, no, not so much with my dad and my grandfather, but I did take lessons, like, and I never really stuck with them. I guess I wasn't like the greatest student, but I had a couple different teachers that I would take lessons with, and I picked up little, you know, I think as you do when you study anything, it's like you just take little things. And I love taking lessons. I kind of miss it. I still want to take lessons. This one guy who was just like, sort of just all about how you sit, and he would kind of do this thing where he's like, take a drumstick and reach to the sky and then tap your drum and then do your other hand and do that. And it was all about like opening your body up. Another guy was all about keeping your elbows out, like forming a V, you know, so you don't keep your elbows in so you can get most of the power. Just little like nuggets I would pick up from these different dudes. And it was cool. The best was this one guy kind of like in Chelsea on like West 16th Street, sort of where I grew up. And he was like a metal drummer. He had the sickest drum set. I would walk in and my jaw would drop, and all I want to do is just play it. And he would just kind of walk me past it onto this little pad. And it was so boring for like 50 minutes. But the last 10 minutes, he would let me bug out on his drum set. And it was just like some, you know, whatever.
Well, you were talking about how you ended up in Noise Police. I think you said you were 11 years old. and that was your like how did you exactly discover the local music scene and you know, you said you covered Agnostic Front Power. Maybe elaborate a little bit on how all of that really kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy looking back. I'm a father now. My daughter's almost 10. Like, I was 10, 11, and kind of going through my experimental drug phase at that age. You know,
Wow.
really with Matt Pincus, sort of, you know, he had a mohawk. He was 11. We were punk rock together, and we would go to Washington Square Park, and we would skate. And we were just kind of intrigued by it. We didn't really know about the New York hardcore scene so much, but then Noise Please happened. And that was kind of like a scene that was sort of dancing with that. It was all kind of a bit of a melting pot, I guess, back then, where like even with hip hop coming up and it was all just sort of together. But fortunately, like what happened first? I guess some of my best friends met, so the timeline's all crazy, but basically Walter Schreifel's younger brother, Dylan, and some of my friends met. And then they basically, the word was that Dylan's older brother, Walter, had a band called Gorilla Biscuits, and they needed a drummer. And one thing led to another, and they came down to my dad's warehouse on 11th Street where I had like a little practice space. That was so cool about that warehouse, is that you can actually play. And I was kind of like, you know, punk rock, and they were more, you know, Queens hardcore. And we met and we played, and all of a sudden I was in Gorilla Biscuits, and that was 1985. So I was 12. And I played, I think one show, I played the Birth of Unity show with them at the Right Track Inn in Long Island with like tons of hardcore bands. And I went out there with Dylan. That was a really crazy night because my dad, I guess my parents got divorced recently. My dad was going through this awesome midlife crisis. He bought a Mitsubishi. It's a black Mitsubishi. He had like none of the details on, or none of the logos or whatever. So it was just all black. It looked like something out of, you know, Back to the Future, but all black. And we drove out to Queens with Dylan and Chris, my friend Chris, and myself. We stopped at White Castle, got some hamburgers, got back in the car. Dylan didn't feel well. He stuck his head out the window, threw up as the car's driving, throw up, gets all over the side of my dad's brand new car. We finally get to the Right Track Inn. I think these metal kids were starting to fuck with us. And then Jay Crackdown came to our rescue. And that was a really cool moment. You know, I didn't realize at the time, but like that was the intro, you know, my introduction to hardcore, where like, fuck, people look out for each other. And there's dudes like Jay Crackdown who are you know, don't know me for shit, but they're just going to catch my back. And we played that show, stayed at Walter and Dylan's house in Queens. That was like my first night, like out in, I think, Astoria or Jackson Heights or something. And it was just, that was sort of my introduction, I think, to hardcore. And then I got kicked out of GB because I really wasn't that good. And I think they got Ernie back. But from there, I joined, similar thing happened after that was my friend Chris met Jules Massey from Side by Side shortly after that. And the same kind of thing. It was like, hey, I got a band called Side by Side. We need a drummer. All right. This is my friend Sammy. And then Side by Side happened. And then from there, it was just like kind of dialed into the New York hardcore scene.
And Side by Side was sort of your first time on record, right?
Yeah. So we recorded a song called Violence to Fade because it was time for Violence to fade out, you know? Enough for that. Right. But it was for the Together 7-inch. We recorded Don Fury's, and that was my first ever recording. And then we recorded the 7-inch shortly after, I think like in a day. And that was like my first record. But we would open for Youth of Today on these road trips. And, you know, because again, the guys were older and they knew the guys in Youth of Today. And so I was just kind of getting looped into the whole scene. But by, you know, then I became really good friends with those dudes. I became super tight with Purcell. He was like my older brother, and eventually got to play in Youth of Today. But around that time too, I was like, I guess getting into like 87, 88, 1987, 1988. And Some Records was around. So I would go to Some Records, and there was this real community that was happening. There was shows at CB's on Sundays. There was a Pyramid Club on Saturdays. I remember like Ray Dees put up a letter at Some Records one day about a softball game he was organizing. Like, we're doing a softball game in Tompkins Square Park this weekend. It was just like, really, again, looking back, just like, I don't know if that shit exists now. It was a really special time.
You really like kind of fell into a lot, which is such a compelling part of your story, because, you know, everyone has a different one. And the one thing that I think everyone has in common is kind of what you were talking about, which is that like everyone looks out for each other. And it really shows now when you look at all the guys that you're still friends with and still playing music with, like that kind of separates the whole hardcore thing, even in they're non-hardcore bands. Like, you know, if you want to talk about like even rival schools and Nightmare Review, it's all, you know, which we'll get to. It's all still deep rooted in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you were just born into a lot of it, which is what makes your story really unique, I think. And so afterwards, after Side by Side, you end up in Youth of Today for quite a while, right? Didn't that take up? And was that your first touring experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think in like 88, 89, 90, a lot of shit just happened where we were just, you know, we were just kind of just starting projects and doing things, and, you know, or someone else would start a band and needed a drummer, and so I would fall into it. Like Judge originally started with Luke on drums, and then Drew played for a minute, and then I played, you know. Project X was like this project that we had. We wanted to just do something full tilt, totally fucking straight edge. We made up these like aliases. I was the Youth, and we recorded these songs. And Youth of Today was, you know, Youth Today to me was the big one though, because I was a fan. Like I would mosh at 11 years old, like in my room with my friends. Like we were just, you know, singing along, like Got Bridge on the Walls, Got Can't Close My Eyes. I was a huge fan. And, you know, Walter and Luke were really good friends, and Brissell and I were really good friends. So when Mike left, Mike Judge was the drummer for Youth Today. When he left to start Judge, there was this opening, and there was sort of like this, you know, tryout kind of competition thing that I ended up getting. And I was stoked, man. It was like I joined the end of '87. We flew to California, and we played Fender's Ballroom with 7 Seconds and Uniform Choice, which like
that's
Fender,
wild.
it was just, I mean, I think it was big, but it looked fucking huge to me. And I think we drove up the coast, played Gilman Street. And then that summer of '88, we toured the US. '89, we went to Europe, which was like really bugged out going to Europe. I think we were the first straight edge band ever to go there. Played like 90% squats. Totally got ripped.
Like Minor Threat never went to Europe, I don't think, right?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah. That's wild. And you were throughout this time, because you started, you know, 11, 12. This is like pretty much, how old are you when you're on tour with Youth of Today and traveling?
Yeah, so I was like 14, 15, you know, then going, Europe was like 16, 17. I mean, it was interesting, like you know, growing up in New York, you grow up quicker. My house was sort of like, my mom was always into just having people come by. Like, I remember Billy Bitter from Side by Side. I think he broke his leg, and he lived in a walk-up, and so he couldn't get to his place, so he stayed with us for a little bit. I think Gavin might have stayed with us for a minute, but like just different. Purcell stayed there a lot. Like just, so my mom knew these dudes, you know, and they were all good people. We were straight edge, and they were like, you know, like my big brothers. So and it also happened very gradual. Like I remember doing my first road trip with Side by Side, and my mom gave me like $100, and she was like, call me from the first rest stop, call me from the second road stop, call me do this, do that, do this, you know, like very protective. And then just before we knew it, it turned into like, hey, what's up, Mom? I'm in DC. Like, I'm in Buffalo. You know, it just sort of naturally progressed into that. California thing was 10 days. And then that summer of '88 was the big one. That was like 2.5 months. But my dad came and visit. You know, they were, again, like they would take me to play shows, like to get me, like getting into CBs was not easy. And they would walk me in to play, and they would walk me in to see other bands. And my sister took me to the old Ritz to see some of those shows. And so like they were supportive of it. So it just kind of happened naturally.
You have a lot of people taking you under their wing, and now which answers some of my questions is like, you were hanging out with straight edge people who were older that were looking out for you. So I guess in a way, there was no reason to really be too concerned about your safety in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it seems crazy looking back as a parent now a little bit, but I mean, it just was I think you go with your gut in life, you know, and I'm sure my parents just sort of would check it out, look around, talk to some people, and kind of feel it out. And you know, as my mom said, you know, I could be in more trouble on the school bus with the football team. You know, it's like you can get into a lot of shitty situations as a kid, and you know, there's all different ways. So like, it was pretty cool. And you know, and the fact that there was a creative outlet too, where you could start a record label, you could start a fanzine, you could make your own shirt, you could record your own record, you could start your own studio. Like, that's fucking amazing. I mean,
you're being really creative and smart with how you're spending your time. It's more productive than an average teenager. So the whole teenage years, let me know if I'm missing anything, but it's like you got Noise Police, Side by Side Project X, Youth of Today, Gorilla Biscuits, and Judge, kind of all happening. Well, some of the bands are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And then before we're going to get into Civ because that's an interesting story. But before Civ, was it that you were playing with Shelter briefly? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I joined Gorilla Biscuits again in 1990 or 89, 90, 91. We went to Europe with Gorilla Biscuits at some point, 1990, I think. But and I played like the last show, and that in effect sort of a bizarre Gorilla Biscuits lineup. We had Purcell, Walter was playing bass, Tom Capone was in the band. But I was in GB, and then I recorded Free Will and Sharon Noggerty with Shelter. So again, just like doing these projects and playing with my friends, and we were all, Walter played in a lot of different bands. Arthur played in Warzone, Underdog, Token Entry, like all these different bands. It was just sort of what we were doing. But it did kind of come to a halt. I don't know, probably around 91 when GB broke up and the scene changed and CB's kind of got shut down, and there was a lot of violence that came into the scene, and things just sort of like switched up. And that was right around the time that some of my friends started going to college, and it was like, shit, maybe this is over. Maybe it's time to like turn the page and grow up. And so I was like, I got to go to college. I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. And I went to the new school, and they had a jazz program. It was the first year of this jazz program. So I was like, all right, I like jazz. I'm not really a jazz drummer, but let me go and try college and see if that's the thing to do. And I went for about a year and a half. And during that time, a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to be in his reggae band. And it was called 32 Tribes. And it was with these 4 other dudes that went. It was cool, man. They went to Eunice, which was the United Nations school. So all their like parents were, ambassadors and all that stuff. And it's like the bass player was from Jamaica. The singer was from Sierra Leone. They were all like from these far out places and pretty authentic and brought some different stuff to it. So we were playing this whole other scene. We were playing Nels. We were playing colleges. We were playing Sticky Mike's Frog Bar, and then TGF Fridays. It used to be the Lone Star on 13th Street and 5th Avenue. We played there a bunch, and that was like when the Spin Doctors were happening and Wetlands was happening, and it was sort of this like post-hardcore, and there was jam bands and reggae and stuff. So it was cool because as a musician, and then I got to play different stuff, and we had this weird sound of reggae roots with my kind of like overplaying and playing too hard type shit. And then at the same time, I'm going to the new school and I'm learning jazz, or trying to. And that was psychedelic because like because it was the first year, I think they were still working out the kinks. So they had these pretty heavy teachers, but they were great people, but some of them weren't the best teachers. So like Reggie Workman, who played bass with John Coltrane, was one of my teachers. Wow, and he would just fucking yell at me. He's like, motherfucker, he's like, you're hitting the fucking bass drum too hard. Like, what do you have, fucking rocks tied to your feet? Just yelling at me. Chico Hamilton, I would go to his house, and Bernard Purdy was a teacher there, like just different dudes. So that was cool.
Did you take a class with Bernard Purdy?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was cool. I mean, I picked up some good stuff for there for sure. But again, it was about a year and a half, and then I kind of got burnt on it. I didn't really want to become like an ethnomusicologist. I didn't want to teach music. I just wanted to get better and really wanted to just play in bands. And so at the time, my friend Ian Love, who played guitar in rival schools, he and I had a band called Loaded. It was called Engine at first, and then we changed the name to Loaded. And Loaded started to get serious, and we were going to get like a deal. That was kind of like when I think major labels were started getting involved in that kind of sound. I guess grunge was happening. So, that was an interesting time. And so we had Loaded with Ian and I, and Alex Napax was in the band, and the singer for 32 Tribes sang for a little bit, this guy Tijan. But I also started doing Civ because Walter had this idea of like, hey, Civ, our friend, is great, but like he didn't want to do another Grill Biscuits record, but we should do something with Civ, and let's write some songs, and we'll call it Civ. And he grabbed Charlie, myself, and eventually Arthur, and he wrote Can't Wait a Minute More and Et Tu Brute, which we recorded for this 7-inch. And then pretty quickly, we ended up getting a record deal with Atlantic Records. Mike Gitter, who was a hardcore dude.
Also,
he was a hardcore dude. Yeah, Gitter's great. He was doing A&R at Lava Atlantic, and he basically, we made a music video first, like just totally backwards. But our friend Marco Siega from Bad Trip had this really great concept for a talk show. and we basically pulled some money together and just hustled it and like recorded this talk show video for Can't Women and More. And then it just kind of started to take off. It became a buzz clip on MTV. Some radio stations started to play it. We got this record deal, but we only had 2 songs. So we had to write an album like in a month. So, you know, Walter dug into it, and Charlie and I and Arthur, and we made Set Your Goals. And then that came out, and that was cool because like I was always down to play music, but I didn't want to just keep doing the same shit. I didn't want to just keep playing CBs forever as much as I like CBs. This was a way to like, oh, now I'm playing Red Rocks on the Warped Tour. That's weird.
Right.
You know, now I'm playing
like one of the main acts on the
first. Well, I mean, Civ, we were on the second stage. We were on a trailer, but we were coming up. We had a lot of momentum. You know, Quicksand, L7, Sublime was on that, and that was the first Warped Tour. And then from there, it just started. You know, I think with, you know, thanks to really the Offspring and Green Day and those bands, they kind of opened the door to like, you know, pop punk and whatever that shit was.
Yeah, I was gonna say like how wild it must be playing punk rock music all your life or most of your life at that point, and then like learning how to play different styles. Maybe like your interests are changing, and then the very music that you've been playing this whole time is what actually gets you to that next level. So you just own it, you know? It's like fucking wild.
Yeah, I mean, but it was cool too because yes, it was this new thing, and there's like Civ guitar picks and bags of Doritos and some weird shit happening. But I'm with my old hardcore friends, and we're really still playing a lot of hardcore tunes. Like we got to play Madison Square Garden opening for Kiss.
I was gonna bring that up because of the whole full circle moment.
But we played like the song "State of Grace" there. You know, we played fucking social Solid Bond there. You know, like so. Just it's for whatever if that was a smart move or not. But it was just cool still playing hardcore throughout those times.
Let's focus on that show just for a second because it's so. I always wondered about that. I didn't get to go, but I remember it happening. Like, what is that? What's even running through your mind when your hardcore band is playing Madison Square Garden opening for Kiss? Like,
yeah.
What do you remember about that?
I mean, for me, growing up in New York and being a Kiss fan, and you know, going to see like, you know, Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, or Ranger games, even like, you know, to be able to play the Garden open for Kiss, it was amazing. I took the subway there, rolled out, played the show. It was really cool. You know, we had this sort of like big time manager, and his Scott McGee, and his brother was Doc McGee, and Doc managed Kiss and used to work with like Ozzy Osbourne and Motley Crue and stuff. So, you know, but Scott managed Quicksand and Orange 9mm, and also Skid Row. So we always kind of were like, you know, we'd go to his office and like Sebastian Bach would be there. It was like, holy shit, this is, you know, just so we have eyes on this other world. So I think Kiss, when they came back that year in '97, I think it was, they wanted to like have newer bands open. So that's why Civ got that. But it was cool. I mean, we didn't really get to like hang with them. We weren't high-fiving and all that kind of shit. Sure. Still, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you don't want to push it when you're already there.
I gave my video camera to Steve Reddy. I borrowed this video camera from my friend Marcus Rayboy, who was a video director. It was a really nice, like high tech at the time. Gave it to Steve Reddy to film, but he kind of like held his finger on the record button. He didn't realize that you have to just hit it and then stop. So the whole time it's just record, stop recording, record, stop recording. So I've got this video from that, from Steve, that, you know, but it's better than nothing. But
yeah, because there's nothing on YouTube from that show, unfortunately, but pretty wild. And also, before we even move on from Civ, I could be wrong, but I feel like Civ was probably the first hardcore band to get any kind of national attention like that on MTV. I mean, there was obviously like Sick of It All had stepped down, which had gotten on Beavis and Butthead, and I'm not even counting like the post-hardcore stuff, but that was a breakthrough moment.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was very New York hardcore. We had Lou and, you know, on that song, so that was also like another tie-in. But it was an interesting time. You know, again, Sick of It All got signed to a major label. Orange 9 did. Seaweed was there. Into Another got signed to Hollywood. Like, you know, a lot of our friends were kind of, you know, also getting thrown into this new sort of world. And then you start touring globally. Like, so Sid would go to Japan. We did really well there. Our friend Dwight, he was bringing bands over. So we would, you know, we would go to Japan and like 3 or 4 times. And then we went to Australia. We did like Went to Hawaii, we played there. So it just was kind of like, again, just it was nice not doing the same thing over and over again, and being able to, and I've always like been up for the adventure, you know, as long as you're a nice person, like I'm down for, you know, to try it and see what's what. So like we did it, and and I've also like always been more of a band dude. Like, you know, I mean, session stuff is cool. I've done a little bit of it, but I really like being in it with my dudes, and you kind of sink or swim, and that's a fun thing. And so, you know, I've had a lot of those, which I'm thankful for. But yeah, we made the second record, which was cool, but the label didn't really get behind it. And then eventually, you know, like most bands, we just sort of were like, all right, we're fried. Let's like kind of take a hiatus, which turned into a breakup.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it was ironic that I love both records. The second record was even more commercial sounding, in my opinion, compared to the first one, which was still very hardcore. But yeah, it was a really cool run. And whenever you guys do reunions, it's great. And did you ever? Because we're gonna get into the other stuff, which is like a lot of session work and and then more bands that you started. But did you want to be a session drummer, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I guess I kind of wanted to, just because that's what I was told, that like that's what a drummer can do to make a living. Like if you become a session drummer. I guess I didn't really know what that meant, you know. And you know, the few sessions I did, I would kind of get paid like scale or something. Like it wasn't even really like that great of money. I was, you know, I'm most thankful for what I did, but you know, I felt like it was always in California, and I was in New York at the time, so it wasn't really around. There's some weird stuff, like our friend Marco Siega, who did the Can't Wait a Minute More video. One day he reached out to Walter and said, hey, do you want to do a preferred stock cologne song, a jingle? So he grabbed Arthur and myself, and we did that. And that was like my first time doing like a jingle, and that was, you know, interesting. And but I just, I didn't really, it never really flowed. I didn't like the idea of becoming like a Josh Freese type dude. Like it always seemed sexy, and I would like to. It just never really happened. I mean, I was fortunate to have a couple cool ones that came together. But also, it is nice to play with other people. I mean, at the end of the day, like I like playing music, and so.
Yeah, your background too. Like as a drummer, I can see where it all comes from with the reggae and the dub and the jazz, and obviously the hardcore punk stuff, which you know, in this part of your career that we're going into, really starts to come out and blossom in your playing. After Civ, was it Era Type 11 before Glassjaw, or was it Glassjaw first?
I think it was Glassjaw first, because I remember Civ was in Japan in August of '99, and I think that was probably our last like tour. But I think I went to Spain to play a weird reunion show with Youth of Today. It was like a metal fest, or some like Metallica played. It was really bizarre. And then I went to New York. It was sometime around like '99. But then Mike Gitter, who signed Civ, calls me about the blue and says, hey, this dude Ross Robinson's a producer. He's got an imprint through Roadrunner, and he's signed this band called Glassjaw. He's doing pre-production in New York. You know, the drummer's not working out for whatever reason. Do you want to come down and check it out? I went down. I ended up getting the gig. You know, those guys, what was interesting about that is that I was always the baby in all my bands, and now I was the older one. They were like kids, you know, they were 5 or 6 years or maybe more younger than me. And, you know, they were pissed a little bit too, because their buddy just got fired, and Inbox made like to learn these songs. But it was a really cool process, man. We basically did, you know, 12 days of pre-production in New York. We take one song, work on it all day, try and tweak it, try and make it as great as possible, record it on a little boombox cassette. And that was that song. Next day, same thing. Next day, same thing. After 12 days, we had the album, and Ross said, all right, we're going to California to make this record. So I was like, all right, cool. And that was a session moment, because I was just getting hired. I was a hired gun. I wasn't really in the band. And so I was just sort of getting paid. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, like go with the flow. And sure enough, we went to this 60-acre ranch in Topanga Canyon that the Moody Blues owned, or Malibu or something. But and there's like avocado trees, and it's awesome. And we're getting ready to record this record. There's like a basketball hoop. The ocean's down there. And the manager was like, hey, my roommate's coming, and she's a model, and she's cool. We're going to have a barbecue. Her friends are coming. Everything's great. Da, da, da. And in walks, you know, my future wife, who I ended up marrying.
So crazy, man.
Yeah. So she and I hit it off. Sue and I like fully hit it off, and she stayed for like a few weeks, and we made this record, which like it just was a special record. I mean, to this day, I get chills listening to it. And Ross, the way he produces, is really like full on, like fucking throwing shit at you, and just like.
Yeah, his style is known to be very pull a lot of emotion out of the players.
Yeah, like you know, I always talk about this one moment. Like he would bring, because I've done records where it feels like you're in the doctor's office. It's just like, all right, next take. That wasn't good. Do it again. You know, like more time. Sucked. Take a break. Do it again. But Ross's whole thing about vibe, and he would, if the vibe sucked, we'd go on a hike and we'd come back and we'd do it again. Or he would have people in the control room when people were recording or when Daryl was doing his vocals. And I remember like Daryl was like 19 and he was like pushing him, like, he's like, all right, man, like, what's the song about? And he's like, oh yeah, it's about like my girlfriend broke up with me. And Ross was just pushing him like, no, dude, like, what's this shit about? He's like, well, like, and he's like shaking. He's like almost in tears. He's like, you know, I have Crohn's disease and I was in the hospital and I'm bleeding out my ass. And my best friend told me that, you know, my girlfriend was like cheating on me with my other best friend. And it was just like there's like, you know, 10 of us in the room and everyone's all fucking freaked out. And all of a sudden it says, go, hits record, he sings Major. And it just like, it was great. So I learned a lot from Ross, and that record was cool.
That's, yeah, I'm from Long Island and I grew up watching those guys. I think I saw one of their first shows ever. So it was super exciting for a Long Islander like myself to see a band graduate from our scene into, you know, a situation like that. And then when you were in there, it was like, whoa, that's a dude from fucking you know, Youth of Today playing in Glassjaw.
Yeah, I mean, there was sort of like the worlds were kind of coming together in an interesting way. Ray Capo happened to be out there, and I had him come by the studio, and he and Daryl sang a version of One Night Stand together. So that was sort of cool, like bringing, you know, my dude, Ray Capo, into the mix with these new dudes. And then what was cool about the Glassjaw thing is it also like opened me up to this whole other Long Island scene, which, you know, shortly after that, the Movie Life did a tour. They needed a drummer. I learned the set last minute. I did a tour at the Movie Life.
Yeah.
And then, well, then right around then we started this record label, me and Matt Pincus and Walter and our friend Craig. And we signed, you know, we knew Artie, and so we signed Airtype 11. He had this new band, and 6 going on 7. We did a Hot Water Music record. And
right, yeah, you guys put out, was it No Division?
Yes, No Division. Walter produced that, the Hot Water Music record. But we did some other weird shit. Like it's funny, we joke about it now. It's not a good joke, but we passed on Taking Back Sunday. You know, we passed on like grade.
Real quick, those guys asked me to play drums twice, and I said no. So I feel you.
Yeah, the joke's on us, man. Yeah. But we passed on a lot of shit. I mean, we were just trying to like, I don't know where. I mean, we were trying to maybe, I don't know, do some experimental stuff. We had a band called Whoa, which was from England. It was all instrumental, and then Eric Mingus was Charles Mingus' son, and we wanted to do a comedy record at one point. We were bugging out.
You guys are putting out some really cool shit. I was gonna mention that, and so I'm glad you brought it up. After Airtype 11, Movie Life, filling in and doing the record label. I mean, because you were in Glassjaw for a record, and then you eventually stopped doing that. Was Rival Schools the next thing, or was it?
Yeah, that actually was sort of happening at the same time of Glassjaw, because I had to sort of choose, and that's what happened right after the Glassjaw record came out. They're like, "Great, you're gonna be in the band. Like, we're going on tour with the Deftones or something." And I was like, "Fuck, man! I got this other band called Rival Schools, and we just got signed to Island Records, and that was happening. So I kind of had to make a choice, and I chose Rival Schools. I mean, those were my older friends, and you know, musically it was a little more chill and kind of different. You know, Glassjaw was pretty full on, but yeah, in retrospect, I wish I could have done Glassjaw too, because that was a special band. But yeah, we started doing Rival Schools. We made United by Fate shortly after that. I think it came out in 2000 or 2001 or something, and then kind of did it again for like another 4 or 5 years until we got burnt out. But you know, but it was great because we had success in the UK, which was cool. Like, I think it's cool having success in like one country. You know, when you hear about like Doggy Dog being huge in England, or you know, so and so being huge in France, or like Muse broke in France first, or that kind of thing. So we go to England, and like shit was sort of popping off. It was fun.
There's a lot of New York bands that had that experience in England, which was interesting. And I know you guys were really big out there. Rival Schools, I love all your bands, but Rival Schools actually was #1 for me. Still is. I really love that band.
Cool.
You guys ended up on Island, and you got back together a few times. You know, I don't want to harp on too many things regarding like reunions and breakups and shit, but do you think the band will ever play again or do anything?
We talk about it here and there. You know, it's just a matter of like, so I wouldn't rule it out, but I also wouldn't say it's happening. But I mean, I'm pulling for it. I think that what's cool about that band is that I feel like we never really broke up, and the fact that we got to get back together 10 years later and did Petals, and then I think shortly after that we released Found. Yeah. It's like, it's there, you know, and we have songs actually. We wrote a bunch of songs, like 15 tunes, right after we kind of split up again. So we have a lot of music. We wanted to actually demo some stuff with Jay Robbins, and you know, it's so I would love to do it. You know, we talk about it a little bit, but it's something I gotta.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic, man. Okay, so at some point you start getting more session gigs. Was the Limp Bizkit, obviously the Limp Bizkit thing had to have been tied into the Ross Robinson connection. So you mind talking about how you ended up on a Limp Bizkit record?
The manager, Rodney Afshari, was a friend of mine. He was managing a Static Lullaby, and that was like a session thing. Like, yo, I think they were on Columbia. It was like, come to California and record on this thing. So I did a session with the Static Lullaby, which was pretty cool. It was like, I don't know if their fans dug that record, but it was a pretty bugged out record. But I was in LA, and so I was, you know, I think I might have even been staying with Ross, or I don't know where the hell. No, I wasn't staying with Ross, but I was in touch with Ross, and he basically hit me and said, "Hey, man, what do you think about the LB?" And I was like, "What's the LB?" He said, "Limp Bizkit." So I was like, "All right, sounds interesting." You know, he's like, "Why don't you come by for like a sort of an audition, meet Fred and Wes and the dudes?" And so I went in Hollywood, in LA somewhere, and met them. We jammed, and you know, they were cool. You know, like Fred was a trip, and he like, remember he asked me, he's like, "You were in Youth Today?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I saw Gigi Allen once," and I was like, "Okay, cool." But I ended up getting, you know, yeah, he's a great dude. I really have a lot of respect for him. He's cool. But anyway, like that was a bug out. We went to, it's like, okay, now you got it, and we're making this record. We went up to Marin County, Northern California. They rented a sick mansion. They gave me the master bedroom because I guess they just thought it would be funny or something. So I had this like huge bedroom, and we went to a place called The Site where Pearl Jam recorded 10. Okay. And it was like, there was 2 chefs cooking like healthy food. And I had like any kind of, it was like, what kind of drums do you want? Like, well, we set up 2 drum sets. I just was like, it was like a kid in a candy store. Like, you know, just go like anything you want. Cymbals, like snare drums. Like, here's a bunch of snare drums. And so we were playing. And so we would write a song a day. And then we would kind of demo it, and it was sounding fucking good. It was like heavy, like like second Rage record at times meets like Pantera at times or something. It was just good. I mean, Wes is a great guitar player, bass player is great, Lethal's great. It was ripping, and then it kind of like devolved. Like the old drummer came back, and there was some drama, and then like I was out, and then I was in. I was like fucking in the LB, dude, like for a minute, and then I was out, and so. There was a lot of that. And then I think Fred went to make a movie in Prague. So we ended up taking the recording there and doing vocals there. Came back. Ross was no longer on the record. Someone else finished it. They re-recorded some of my songs. They made a hip-hop song. It became an EP. It's called The Unquestionable Truth Part 1. Check it out, folks. I think a few days ago, it was the 15-year anniversary of that record. But that was that was it. But it was again, like looking back or every day, I'm into these experiences, you know, like if, another sort of weird one around that time was going back to New York, and my friend Oliver Ray, this kid I went to high school with, he dated Patti Smith, and they lived on MacDougal Street. I lived on 93 MacDougal Street. So someone just said Warrior Soul. Yes, there's that too. But so one day Oliver's like, "Hey man, like Patti wants to know if you want to play drums with her for a show." And I was just
no shit. I had no idea.
Yeah. Totally. So they, so I went to like, I thought I knew every fucking musical place in New York City, every rehearsal spot, everything. Not the case. I went to some stealth fucking secret Patti Smith level type rehearsal studio in Soho, like on Worcester Street. And we rehearsed. Oh yeah. Then the next day, like was the gig, and it was at Washington Irving. It was some kind of benefit. and we went to pick up her guitar player. That dude, he's kind of like a guy. What's his name?
Yeah, I know you're talking about. Fuck yeah, like
Yeah,
he was there since the beginning.
fuck, he was cool. But he came down and he lived on St. Mark's Place. We picked him up, me and him and Oliver in his car, and he had an oud, which is like this instrument with like a turned like neck. And he's like, hey man, like he's like, check out my oud. And I was like, oh, it's cool. And Oliver's like, yeah, it's cool. He's like, get in. And he got in the front seat. I was in the back seat. And Oliver shuts the door and cracks his fucking oud in half. But he was so mellow. He was just like, he's like, oh, it's okay, Oliver. It's fine, whatever. But anyway, went to the gig, played this gig. I would like to take that one back if I could. I overplayed. I played way too heavy.
Right.
I played like a hardcore drummer. And it wasn't. It could have been better. That one keeps me up at night. That and We're Not Alone.
Is there any video footage of you playing with Patti Smith?
No, I have a set list though.
Okay. And,
which is pretty.
Really quick, you never played any live shows with the LB. It was only on record.
Yeah, only on record. There was talk of going to Dubai to not even play, just to hang out. It was like, there was a big meeting about that. Like, we're gonna go to Dubai. We're gonna go to this club. We're just gonna hang out. I was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it.
Fucking A, man. And you know what I want to say too. This is I think a valuable lesson that I think any
Lenny
musician.
K. Sorry, Lenny K.
Thank you, there it is, Lenny K.
Lenny K.
There's a lot of valuable lessons to be learned here from some of the things you set a model for, which is if you keep an open mind, because in sometimes with punk and hardcore, people can get super snobby, but you kept an open mind all the time for the most part, and got to experience things that maybe a typical hardcore kid would not have allowed themselves to experience. So I think that's a super cool lesson from an outside perspective to take from your story. Now there's a bunch of other stuff. So and we're gonna get kicked off. This whole thing gets you kicked off at the end of the hour. But why don't you walk me through the following? We'll just make it a loaded question, and maybe you could tell us in order, how it all kind of came to be. There's Tech 9, Head Automatica, World Be Free, and Constant Elevation. I don't know if I'm missing anything else.
Well, you're missing Nightmare View was a cool chapter. Nightmare View was happening around.
Oh shit, that's right.
That was happening around Limp Bizkit days, and like, I guess it was like 2006 or something. But that was a cool band. I met Brandon. He was in the Movie Life, and he had a new band with Joe McCaffrey and Ryan, and so we did Nightmare View, which was cool. And we made a really great record with our friend Jason later.
Talented.
Yeah, we did an EP called Bang, and then I was just in a different place. Again, I was a little older than those guys. I didn't really want to tour that way. None of them had places to live. They hated their girlfriends. They wanted to get the fuck out and tour, and I was like, I'm not really there. So I left that, but yeah, then like Head Automatica, I was friends with Daryl and those guys from Glassjaw days, and my friend Jason later was going to produce their record. So that was like a session hired gun thing, which turned into like being in the band. We played some weird college shows. We made this record, but the record never came out. It kind of got caught in some weird major label bullshit, and it never came out. But there's some really good songs and good recordings, and spent a lot of time. And then, but then I moved to LA, I guess about 8 years ago. Somehow it's been 8 years already, but for a job, like in this advertising, doing music and brand partnership stuff. And I was here and I was like, fuck, I want to play music, man. And so I liked the idea of doing just sort of a California type hardcore project, and was talking to Scott Vogel and Andrew Klein, Joe Garlett. We wrote these songs. It became World Be Free. Got Arthur to play on it. We made this album, but the guys are all really busy. Joe's one of the Who's tour managers, and then Scott's always fucking touring with Terror. So we didn't really get to play that much, but we just recorded a new EP, which is coming out soon. It's coming out like, I want to say in 2 months. It's 5 songs. It's good.
Okay, it's coming out in Revelation?
Yeah, it's coming out in Revelation, and as well as this other project called Constant Elevation, which is Vinny from the Movie Life and I'm the Avalanche and his own solo stuff. And that was interesting because I started writing songs. Like I never really sat down and wrote shit, so I figured start with hardcore. That's an easy gateway. Yeah. And so I started writing like bass lines, and it kind of like annoyed the shit out of some friends, the guys from World Be Free, to play on it. And we made, and then Vinny was like, I'll sing on 3 songs, and then that became Constant Elevation. We became like more of a band. We've got Mike Ireland and Yanni, who plays bass in Caspian. He's playing in Constant Elevation now. So we have an EP as well coming on Rev.
Yeah,
So
that's one of the last shows I saw before the pandemic, which is where we met. So,
yeah,
great band. Shout out to Yanni. He was giving me some shit because I posted all the bands that you played in, except
yeah,
for Constant Elevation. And I wrote him, and I was like, of course. Not to mention, that's how I even came to do this interview. So, shout out
yeah.
to Yanni.
That's Yanni.
And
So.
then, what's up? What was the Tech Nine situation? How'd you get involved with
Oh
that?
yeah, another Ross Robinson type thing, like out of the blue, just like, hey dude, want to play on Tech Nine? I just moved to California, and he hit up West Borland, and I really wasn't familiar with Tech Nine, and he was a bugged out dude. He was very cool, but he showed up with a Jason mask on and some girl that he met in Las Vegas, and he was sitting on Ross's couch, like which was on the street, like some like or not his couch, somebody threw out a couch, but he had this mask and he was writing lyrics, and we were just bugging out. We made this record, the Therapy Sessions or something, which was sort of cool. And there's a song called The Hiccup, which was really, it's just a bugged out tune. It's like kind of, I guess it's like rap rock, but it was fun. Again, I like just that throw people together and sort of experiment, and that's what that was.
Um, I just love the diversity of all, man. It's great. You brought some amazing music to into the world. So thank you for everything and getting into your backstory. We still have some time. I'm going to get to some of the questions that a couple people left here, but let's see. You are now on the West Coast. You're working at Revelation. So shout out to Jordan Cooper. That's fucking awesome. Okay, so here are my pandemic questions. You ready? Okay. Top 5 New York hardcore records.
Age of Quarrel comes to mind right off the top of my head. Born to Expire with a hot number second coming into. This is in no order, by the way.
Okay.
Break Down the Walls, Grill Biscuit Start Today. And number 5 is Murphy's Law.
Wow, okay, cool. And Born to Expire, man, that's just a fucking nasty record. So
nasty.
Big time. Yeah, good list. Okay. Let's just say you're stuck in the pandemic longer than you need to be, and you can only keep 5 records of any genre. What are those 5 records? Why?
Like John Coltrane, Giant Steps, Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, Bob Marley, Catch a Fire, The Clash, Sandinista, because I get like 3 records in one for that one. Okay, I just see what I did there. See that? And EPMD, Strictly Business.
Sick. All right, cool. We might start making playlists out of these, which is why I asked, because this episode will end up on YouTube tomorrow, and I'm thinking that we might tie in some Spotify playlists to promote. Which, by the way, anybody watching, Sammy's got a great playlist on the Revelation Records Spotify profiles.
Yeah, and the Revelation thing's interesting because, again, I moved out here and I started working in like advertising. A friend of mine really looked out and just kind of put me into this position, and but I started learning like all this marketing type shit, and then I also realized that coming from hardcore, it's like the ultimate school for marketing. I mean, all these bands, that Cro-Mags album cover is fucking iconic. The Misfits skull, the Youth Today fist, like the Gorilla Biscuits, Gorilla, and playing shows and pop-ups and all this kind of shit. Like it all sort of was hand in hand. So I had an opportunity to kind of get on board with Rev and sort of help them out and try and help sort of just do some basic shit, really, which is get a new website, which we just launched the other day. But the other one is just to do some fun stuff and kind of connect the dots. And so there's this playlist series, which is cool, where we get different people to kind of curate their own thing.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I might have to hit you up because I played on 2 records on Revelation. So
do it. I want to get some I'm trying to get some curveballs. Like I want to get like KRS-One to do one, or somebody just like Joan Jett, or just something fucking bizarre. I don't know.
Yeah, man. Yo, so
Obama.
Before I get to the couple of questions that people submitted, I do have one more, which is this is probably a tough one, and this is just me brainstorming right now. But if you had to pick 3 records that you played on that are the most special to you, I don't know if that's fair to all your bands, but is that possible for you to pick 3?
Glassjaw, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Silence, Rival Schools, United by Fate, and think that Nightmare View record. It's just the first one, the album, Nightmare View.
It's a really good record, yeah. Shout out to Brandon, good old friend of mine, and that was one I almost skipped. So thanks for correcting me. All right, we got a couple of questions that some people submitted. Okay, let's start here.
New bands you're listening to?
At Finn Level.
Soul Blind.
New bands you're listening to?
So I started. Yes, I started managing some bands recently. Not two bands. A band called Narrowhead from Houston, who are awesome, and Soul Blind, who is that dude Finn, who asked the question. Is that baiting? Is that what baiting is when you do that? I got baited. Oh, they're really good. They're from Poughkeepsie. So yeah, Soul Blind, Narrowhead are awesome. Band called Dare, which we just signed to Rev, who are awesome. That band Drain are really cool. And yeah, that's kind of all that comes to mind right now.
Okay, got a couple other ones here. All right, this one is coming from NJ Bagpipe.
Know 'em.
What's your favorite Rival School song to play live?
My favorite Rival School, the one that you filmed and posted, Undercover's On, is pretty mental because it's epic. I kind of get a drum solo, so fuck it. I'm into songs with drum solos. Was that favorite song to play live or favorite Rival School song?
Favorite Rival School song to play live?
Like The Ghost Is Out There.
Okay. Yeah, good song.
That's a cool song. But yeah, Undercover's On. Fuck it.
Sweet. Okay, now we got another question. Who's New York hardcore's best cook?
It's funny you say that. I'm really fucking good. I was joking to myself, laughing to myself earlier, thinking that I should cook something while I do this. It'd be funny because I like to cook. I think, I guess I can't really say myself, but best cook. Who else could cook in hardcore?
Scott Weingard from Texas.
Oh, yeah, Scott. Duh.
Good cook. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we got another one here coming from shout out to Delta Marie from England. Which of your previous bands would you rejoin in a heartbeat?
Rival Schools. Let's go, man. It's time. It's go time.
Okay. I'm trying to get through these because we're getting kicked off in 3 minutes. How many days did it take to track Glassjaw's Everything You Want to Know About Silence coming from Publius?
Yeah. Shit. I kind of forgot, but I feel like it was like 5 days or 4 days. We couldn't get the song Motel. Couldn't fucking play it all together as a band. So Manny and I jumped back in late one night and just did it, just he and I, which was cool because everything else was with a full band. But as far as the drum takes, yeah. And it was done to tape. And then Ross took a razor blade out and started slicing the tape and did some fucking edits that way. But probably like 4 or 5 days.
Sick. That's a really influential record drumming wise to me. And Manny Carrero, literally, I was just talking about this with someone the other day. Anyone out there, man, if you don't know Manny Carrero, he's one of the best bass players.
Oh, so good.
Unbelievable.
Great dude, yeah.
It looks like the timer is in front of me. You don't see it. It's telling me that we have a minute left. You want to do any quick shout-outs or anything?
Oh, man, shout-outs to no, I'm just excited about this new Revelation website because the old one was charming, but it sucked. So check out the new website. I did a zine with my friend Chris, who's on here, called Speak Up, and it never came out. So we started a section within Rev called Speak Up, where like people can contribute. So please contribute some shit. I'll probably bug you, Chris, to contribute like a little article, but it's like a place for people to contribute stuff. And I'm psyched on the new World Be Free and the new Constant Elevation.
Awesome, man. Well, I got the timer telling me that we're going to get kicked off here. So I just want to thank you for your time. And if anyone missed the first, the first 30, 45 minutes or you showed up late, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. So don't worry, guys. And
cool.
Sam, you rule, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Be good, man.
Stay safe out there.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Thank y'all. Peace.
Take care. Hey, thanks for tuning in. That was a really awesome moment to talk to one of my favorite drummers out there, man. What a fucking legend. And you all rule for spending your Tuesday evening with me. Is it only Tuesday? Jesus Christ. We got a lot of cool episodes coming up. So keep tuning in, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, every day, Monday through Friday. Shout out to Drew Castle for doing the flyers. Shout out to Ralph Torres for doing the video editing. Total Meltdown, NYHC. Follow us. Peace. Thank you so much. Take care.